It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels, and I am back as your guest host. I'm particularly excited today because the past week has been very interesting. We have seen politicians seeking re-elections doing the most to woo voters. Governors are paying pension arrears. We have a particular state of assembly member buying transformers after building a low-budget toilet for 4 years. There's a viral video of a governor giving handshakes to his members after church. I love this energy. That is what the Nigerian people really want. But the big question is, are political godfathers becoming less powerful? Think about it. The current politicians beginning to understand that people are now gravitating towards competence, capacity, as opposed to regular party politics? That is what we're going to kick off the conversation with. Capacity versus party politics. And joining me from Abuja to discuss this is Dr. Toby Oluwatola, who is the Executive Director, CJID, and also a policy analyst. Welcome to the show, Dr. Toby.
Hero, glad to be here.
All right, what's really happening? We've seen a very huge bridge between the people in power and the electorates. There's a lot of communication going on. And is this just because these politicians are seeking re-elections, or is there a massive shift in the political space in Nigeria?
Thank you, Hero. I think young people have to be proud of what we achieved 2 weeks ago. Because for the first time, I think, in my lifetime, people actually have a sense of agency in our democracy. 100%, the election wasn't perfect. But we had about 6 or 7 governors trying to go into the Senate, lose their seats. We had several the presidential candidates of the ruling party, losing in his own state and losing in the states of the president, losing in the states of several of his key supporters. And the reason that is happening is because I was at the polling unit to vote, and people not only voted, but they waited till like midnight to see the votes counted and the votes uploaded. Yes, granted, in many cases, the vote uploads couldn't work. But it is clear that for the first time, we're seeing people have a sense of agency. And the APC losing in Lagos is creating, it's very entertaining what's happening in Lagos. How the incumbent governor is working really hard to woo voters, because for the first time, there's a real chance that the votes of the people may count, and if that happens, he may in fact lose his seat. So it's a very exciting time for our democracy. We had cases where really rags to riches stories of people who winning Federal House of Assembly seats from being Okada riders, and so on and so forth. So it's a really exciting time in our democracy, and I think we should be proud of what we've achieved so far, but even more hopeful. It doesn't mean that we should reduce our expectations or our vigilance. We should be hopeful for what's to come on Saturday.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was having a conversation with a friend, and then he was like, at this rate, if you invite any sitting governor in Nigeria for your grandmother's burial, he will show up. He will take selfie with the caskets, #Adieu Mama, vote for me come March 18th. And the friend happens to be in the studio, Dan the Humorous, who is a satirist. Welcome to the show.
How you doing, my man? Good to see you.
I'm all right. Nice attire.
Yeah.
Okay. What's really going on?
No, nothing. I'm just trying to be in the zone.
All right.
Yeah.
So, can you explain this movement that is really happening, and where can we trace it to?
I think it's as a result of continuous awareness of the people. You know, over time for, you know, maybe some of us young folk who have been about this whole political business from, say, over a decade, you know, there are times you go into conversation with people and be like, don't worry yourself, I beg. Once I have food, I have shelter, I have this and that, I'm good. Whatever they are doing is their business. So it's like, but they've come to the realization that it's an us against them. And if we always keep it at that, it will remain that way. So we have to step in as a people. Therefore, you see constant awareness, and it grows with every election cycle. And I think this is one point that it got to a very significant tipping point, hence that massive participation. And you won't also forget that, to an extent, the middle class have been hit by the realities of certain consequences of actions of government or policies of government, as the case may be, you know. And really, the middle class forms the real the spinal cord, let me, if I can use that as of society, you know, because the rich have always been rich, the poor have always been poor. It's the middle class that always decides things. And then when you see all the economic realities and everything happening to the middle class, it brings them to a point of realization to say what's going on. And then they find out what's going on, and then they say to themselves, it's time to step up, you know, and step up to the plate and, you know, actively participate in the whole civic business of voting and electioneering going on.
Yeah, I agree with you. Something bothers me. There's this, so the topic is capacity versus party politics. And we've seen politicians with capacity in a particular party, but we cannot necessarily vouch for the capacity of other members of the party. So what do you have to say about this voting a particular party from top to bottom mentality?
I mean, it's something that we shouldn't even be discussing at this point in time, because the way the Nigerian political space is, we're not like maybe the Americas or some other places that you say, oh, this party, they believe in so and so kind of things, they believe in so and so kind of thing. In Nigeria here, what's it called? Political parties are basically vehicles, platforms that give you the opportunity, you know, to campaign for votes or to go about your political ambition, as the case may be, or even rise to governance if you win. So we as a people should, at this point, and I think we have also caught that part a little bit with the aftermath of the presidential elections a few weeks ago. So coming down now to the governorship and House of Assembly in front of us, we should actually divorce the parties from the people, because some of the people that made some people vote certain places, if those candidates were, or that candidate were in another party with another name, the result would still have been the same, right? So we should learn how to look at the candidates for who they are. Who is this man? Who is this woman? What is he capable of? And all of that. And of course, that whole top to bottom. I mean, we see a practical demonstration where Aisha Yusufu, you know, I mean, she was all over the place out there for the Labour Party presidential candidate. And lo and behold, we're hearing now that for a state like Enugu, she's rooting for the candidate of ABGA, because maybe she has, you know, a better knowledge of him and believes in his capacity, as you know, as you capture in your topic here. So of course, people should go beyond that thinking that, oh, it is party A, therefore it's party A, because we must even say that some of the people that they believed in, some people already had tickets in that party before the person they believed in came. So how sure are we that those people who are already ticket holders believe in the same ideology that their man, right, you know, believed in? So, I mean, like in my home state, Rivers State, for example, you see where you have a plethora of candidates, 60-70% of them are people that government has paid their bills for at least the last 2 decades. And then against one person that you see that has, you know, global exposure, national acclaim, local appeal. I'm talking about someone like Toyenko, right? And then people are saying, you're a good guy, but the party. I'm like, is it the party that will govern you for 4 or 8 years, as the case may be? So we really should, you know, step out of that.
All right, that's some food for thought. Dr. Toby, so something has always bothered me, and I'm sure it's not just me, a lot of Nigerians. What exactly are the roles of specific offices? Because we've had an issue where certain members of the assembly would say, it is not my job to provide X, Y, and Z. It is my job to monitor and ensure that XYZ projects comes to my constituency. But the people of his constituency want to see a physical project. This is what this representative have done for the community. So let's clarify this. Is there a stipulated role for House of Assembly members to personally conduct projects, or are they just supposed to attract projects to their constituency?
That's a good question, Hero. I think that we should start from defining clearly what the role of a legislator is. So at the federal level, it's the job of the federal legislator to make laws at the federal level and to ratify certain decisions of the executive when it has overwhelming, significant impact on the people. So for example, the appointment of a CBN governor, of ministers, appointments of even electoral commissioners, that needs to be ratified by the legislature. In addition to that, the legislature also have a job to attract projects, yes, frankly, attract development to their areas, to their constituencies, and to speak for their constituencies when laws are being written, when decisions are being taken, what should be implemented, and things like that. Now, in Nigeria, because of the state of our development, we have created this extra role for the legislature that we call constituency projects, where there is a small budget that is available to the legislator to do projects directly through MDAs. So remember, so you have to recall that in the end, the legislature doesn't get this cash. The MDA gets the cash. So for example, if it's an electrification project in a rural area, the money goes to the REA. And the legislator, I meant to say, can then direct the REA where within its constituency wants that project done, and supervise, the appointment of a contractor to do the project and whatnot. And that's because we operate a democracy where people really need to see that you're working. And that's why that's been created. So there's a role for citizens to enforce or ensure that there's accountability on what legislators do with their constituency budgets. And that's really where that comes in. But I want to comment on something, the question that you asked earlier about capacity versus political parties. I think it's true that political parties, a lot of people are simply voting blindly down the line once they've chosen a political party to support. Now, that has both a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that, or two blessings, I would say, two pros, I would say, is that one pro is that now whoever you are voting at the top has some supporters ostensibly down the ballot. If those down the ballot people don't cross carpets after they get into office. But ostensibly, it now has some supporters down the ballot. But it also creates a situation where you now are voting a lot of people. Like there are a number of states where the Labour Party tickets were sold in blocks. So one person got X number of tickets and he just handed them out willy-nilly to his friends. So you now are creating new power blocks that we are not even aware of. So that's one risk that we also face. But on the flip side of that is that we now also have one collateral blessing, which is that we now have increasing representation. Because someone may say that someone who's coming from being an Okada rider does not have capacity to be a legislator. Says who? There are many Okada riders in the country. They need representation. So in a sense, that also creating that representation that we have created is also a blessing. So it's not, so yes, capacity is important, and we have institutes like the Nigerian Institute of Legislative Studies to build capacity once these legislators get into office. But at the same time, we as voters ought to be vigilant and pay attention to who we are voting for.
Sorry to interject. In all of this, there's something that we can take into cognizance, which is the fact that accountability is becoming a thing. Nigerians are demanding for accountability, you know, both with the electioneering process and also with governance. How do you think this energy that we've brought into the elections can translate into holding our leaders accountable post-elections?
I'm glad you asked that question, Hero. I think there are many parts of our constitution that many Nigerians need to go learn. Like I'm sure that many of us don't know that we have the power to recall elected officials. And if you just go read the constitution, there is through a majority of some sort, we have the power of recall. I'm hoping that now that people are more awake, we can start to go look at those things and those options that are available to us. In addition to that, I think the media plays a very important role working with other accountability mechanisms of our democracy, like the judiciary, like the legislature, quite frankly, as well as the law enforcement sector. And we ought to work together to insist on open data. As people are getting into office, we need to insist that they be transparent and tell the people what's going on. And then have the people, the civil society, work with people to make sure that we are keeping people on their toes.
Okay,
and
Dr.
we're
Toby.
using those vehicles of accountability to get things done.
Thank you very much, Dr. Toby. Down the humorous, we barely have 2 minutes. You're a satirist. What do you, I want to be very direct right now, and this is not against anybody, right? But we've had a conversation on social media where a particular politician said some things during the NSAS protest. And people are saying that if he likes, he should buy 1 billion transformers. They're going to vote for the other candidates, not because they think the other candidate is more competent, but just because they want to have this as some sort of revenge vote for that particular candidate. What do you have to say about that?
Actually, revenge vote is a thing, you know. You're even talking about some candidates who bought transformers. There's also a governor that was seen like a hero of some sort, and then he was accused of certain sharp practices in the presidential elections. And there are tons of people who have said, wow, so this guy could do this. I was going to support the guy who was nominating for governorship. I'm going to vote against. So there is a thing like revenge voting, and it comes from perception. As a public office holder, perception is key. How people see you, how they perceive you, how they, you know, love you and all of that. And as a result of this person's action you mentioned now, like I said, it's not, you can even put AC in our ear, let everywhere be chilling. But they have said that we will vote against you. That one now is a case of perception. That means that for everybody, and coming back to accountability that you talked about, for anybody that has the privilege of occupying public office, you must work circumspectly to ensure that every step of the way, what you are doing is in tandem with the feelings of the people, is aligning with the aspirations. Hence, you have good perception. It helps you a lot, because if they zero you, you're in problem.
Like the Yorubas will say, Otilo is gone. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Dan.
Thank you, Hero.
And of course, a big thank you to Dr. Toby Oluwatola. Thank you for gracing this program. All right. That's it for this segment. When we come back, Rubbin' Mind continues. Stay with us.
Ready for your action.